you have an expectation for your business and you're not currently meeting that. And that's where you need to invest in talent acquisition and say, okay, maybe we need to learn how to deliver our value better. Maybe we need to learn how to acquire customers better.
The SBA talks about a couple different things, and we talk about it on this podcast all the time, and I want to beat this dead horse because it's really important. Of the 30-something million small businesses in America, like 27, 28, 30 million of them, like it's a lot. Basically, all of them are sole proprietorships, which means that they do everything. And the other data point that crosses over with that is that cash flow is the number one reason businesses close in the first 5 years, and probably even beyond that. I mean, it probably gets equaled out with things like, you know, exiting the business via death, divorce, whatever, or acquisition. And if you know that, then you say, okay, why is that the case? Because we've been to a lot of places that have good reviews. They have over 4.5 stars on their Google page, or you've been recommended something and you're like, this guy's doing lawn care. And it's like, man, he does a great job with my lawn. I want to recommend him, but he's so booked out that I can't, because he can't hire people. And I think that's a function a lot of times of there's no system on the back end from an operations standpoint. There is no machine that is able to be built to where other people can work on it, right? And so take a second and break down here value, non-value, waste, and what that means for small business owners like me and you.
Yeah, great question. So those three categories are like the only things your business can do. Like, so if you were to take a stopwatch, and you're going to a track and you're like timing your friend running because you're not actually running and you're just wanting to help them run faster. You're taking a stopwatch and you're timing them and saying like, how fast are you actually moving? Are you stopping at any point? What's going on? Imagine if you did that with your business. You'll find that there's three categories. You're either doing value work, you're doing non-value work, or you're just simply wasting time. In the majority of every single business, including the super productive businesses like Toyota, are majority waste. They have a majority of waste inside of their business from a time perspective. Time equals money, and so generally that they're spending, whether it be payroll or just overhead, they're spending money on wasteful activities. And so value is really super simply the thing that your customer pays for. This is what makes you money. And so if you were, going back to like your barbecue restaurant history, the thing that someone's paying for is their meal, period. Their barbecue sandwich, let's say, and their side, like they're directly paying you. Yeah. And they're not indirectly paying you for all the other stuff. They're not indirectly paying you for cleaning the bathrooms. They're paying you for the meal. That's the only thing that they value. It's not that to say that the other stuff isn't important. It's just what do they value? That's the value creation. That's the one thing. There's only one thing that they're coming to you for. It's a solution to their problem. That's it. That's what value is.
Is it like if you stripped away all the fancy branding and marketing and feelings and all the things we say, it's at the core of the problem is, for the restaurant example specifically here, I'm hungry, you sell food.
Yep. 100%. Yep. And so it's the food, period.
Do you feel like people get this part of the equation the fastest because it's like, oh, I was good at doing the thing and now I sell the thing and that's how I get value?
I think at a high level, yes, but then they think about all the things that go into creating that food as value creation, and that's not the case. So the example here would be like your recipes inside of your restaurant, like you doing research on like trying to come up with a new recipe for a barbecue sandwich or something. That is not value added activity. Your customer does not care about you making a new recipe. What they care about is getting a good quality product. And so it's truly like that last touch point of what are you doing to make that customer the food? What are you doing to serve that customer and give the solution to the customer's problem? That is value creation. That is value added activity, which makes you money. Planning your recipes, planning out your day, scheduling your day, assigning team members to the schedule, assigning them to different roles, washing the dishes. None of that is value add activity. Your customers could care absolute less how you run your business. All they want is a solution to their problem.
Unpack that. Why do you think that? Because I have read enough books, as you can see behind me, to where there's some people behind me that'll make a lot of fill a lot of wasted dead trees, essentially, with the nonsense that argues against that. And I think I'm probably on your side, but I'd love to hear you make a case for why do you think customers don't care about all the other things?
Because it's just not why they're spending their money. They it's not that they don't care, they're just not, if the solution to their problem isn't available for them to purchase, none of the other stuff matters. So it's like if you
Mm,
went to a restaurant and didn't get food, but you had a great time, a great experience, it's like you wouldn't even go to the restaurant. You
mm,
you wouldn't even show up. You wouldn't even you wouldn't go there just to experience nice people. And like what are you even servicing? What service
mhm.
are you getting? You're getting food, period, end of story. And so think about that next time you go to like some five-star restaurant, right? Like you experience world-class service, you experience amazing and kind of an environment, but you're also getting food at the end of the day, regardless of what you pay for it, whether it be a $5 foot long or whether it be a $120 Wagyu steak. Like it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's food that is the solution to your problem in that scenario. And
Gotcha.
so, yeah, they just whenever they're exchanging their dollar directly for the thing that they're getting, they're not paying you for the recipe development, the cleaning of the bathrooms, like I was saying. You're paying that expense. You're saying that this is a good investment because this is going to help them come back. This is going to help them enjoy their experience. This is going to help them, etc. This is going
Hmm.
to help deliver that food to their table and help them enjoy it. So that's an investment that you're making. That's not an investment that they're making. They're purely saying, "I want this food." End of story.
So where does, and this maybe comes into the non-value side of things, because I am a marketer, so I see things through a marketing lens. When I think about the difference in the, back to the food example you just laid out there, a Subway, no longer $5 foot long, it's like a
Yeah,
$20
right.
foot
It's like a
long.
$15 foot long.
Yeah, ridiculous. Always smells good, never tastes good. I don't need Subway's ad money. It's fine. So you have Subway, which is like uber cheap, quick experience. The value is the meal that you're getting. Same situation with the Michelin star restaurant, 3-star Michelin star restaurant is, it means it's worth planning a whole trip for. That's what 3 stars with the Michelin world is. It's like, I'm
Yep.
going to travel all the way to England just to go eat at this restaurant. That's how good it is. But you're saying it's the same value creation? Like, how, I'm having a hard time adjusting to that. Like I'm dumb. Please help me be less dumb.
Yeah, it all comes down to, it's not, so I think in marketing, we often tell ourselves about like a customer journey, and that's
Hmm.
important, right? I'm not saying that that's not important. It's just not it's not what the customer is paying for. So you kind of want to come back to like what is the customer paying for at the end of the day. If you stripped it away, would they still come? And that's kind of the good delineator of like um what is value added creation and what is non-value.
Mm.
Like if you took it away, would they still purchase the product? um
So
Go for it.
the value there is not, Subway's value is the, you're paying for a quick meal to just be less hungry afterwards, right? The Michelin star restaurant, you're not paying because you're hungry. You're paying because you're looking for a unique experience. The value creation there is the unique experience. If you wipe away the unique experience, then it's just a really expensive one bite of food, which nobody would be
Yeah.
happy with. So it's not, they're both restaurants, but they're providing different actual sources of value in that. So the business owner on the other end of this podcast has to first understand what the actual value they create is. Is that right?
Yes. And I just go back to, if you take it away, would they still buy the product? And
Okay,
that's
I
the
like that.
biggest, that's the greatest like line in the sand, really, of saying, do they value it or do they not value it? And it can
Mhm.
be different for every single customer. Some customers could value this part of the process that you have. Some customers could value like you perfectly setting my fork next to my plate. Other customers could be like, show me where the forks are. I just don't care. I'm still going to come, and I don't value that part of it. And so you really have to figure out who's your market.
Mm.
This is where marketing is really important, right? Like, what problem are you specifically solving, and what is that solution? And so the whole point of this is like, understand your market. I think there's a ton of marketing principles in this.
Mm.
understand your market, understand the problem that you're actually solving, um, and how you're contributing to that. And man, everything, even value delivery, which is a non-value function, goes into the solution to your problem. So the example here is like, part of the problem could be I'm hungry, but I also want it in 20 minutes. Um, and so they value getting their food in 20 minutes. And so they'll pay more for that. So they'll do a DoorDash or whatever, right?
Mm.
Or they'll go to a quick, convenient restaurant and get that food. Well, that's part of the value that they're coming to you for. And so you setting up your business in such a way where you can quickly deliver the food in such a time frame is part of the reason that they're attracted to you. But
Mm.
if you were quick and you weren't delivering, like if you get rid of the food, it doesn't matter. Like
Yeah.
nothing, you're not actually solving the problem.
No, I've got a good story for this because I think that well, I'd actually be interested to get your take on this. So Lyle's Barbecue, my first business, like we alluded to earlier here, and if you're a listener of the podcast, I talk about this every time. It's exhausting, but it's basically this podcast is my therapy session. I think for that venture in my life. But that menu was made 100% from scratch, and so when you talk about from a lift standpoint, from an operations or the business machine standpoint, a ton of different things had to happen to make that work. Versus like we made our bread from scratch versus like just going to Cisco and ordering whatever their stock hamburger bun was or potato bun, or they have different options. But there was a time where we took a lot of those homemade items away in the name of efficiency, and there was a ton of blowback on that because the problem we solved wasn't just people trying to get a cheap barbecue sandwich. The problem we solved was that people really wanted to come in and have a very authentic homemade meal experience. That was kind of how we had accidentally branded ourselves for a long time. And I think at least me as an operator, I very much so underestimated the importance of that. Is that right or wrong, or what comes to your mind when you hear that?
Yeah, I think that gets into a little bit of like the value delivery, like the way in which you provide that experience for that customer is important to them, right? If it This is the same thing of like why Amazon 2-day shipping is so valuable. Value and valuable is different. We can get into that later.
Okay.
It's why 2-day shipping for Amazon is valuable because I'm willing to trade, let's say, $140 for $100 product if I can get it in 2 days. And
Mm.
so I'm saying, like, in that example, I value getting this solution quickly. Um, and so in a different scenario, if I value an experience, then I'll pay more for that. But or if I value feeling, et cetera, et cetera. But it's always all of those things, those experiences, those other things, they're always attached to the actual thing that they're getting,
Mm.
right? Like if I want a plumber or an excavator or an electrician to come out to my house, um, maybe some of the price increase that I'm paying for is for them to come out tomorrow.
Mm.
But what I'm actually paying for is the excavation or the electrician, like the electrical job. So I want that solution, and I'm willing to pay more if it can be done faster, better, et cetera, et cetera.
So the purpose of knowing the value you actually provide versus what the customer finds valuable, why is that important to delineate between the two?
It's a good question. So there's a couple. I think if we break down the diagram that I sent you, so we
Hmm.
have like value, which is that's the thing that's making you money. It is the foundation of the reason that the customer's coming to you. Then you have non-value, all of the things that you got to do, but you're paying for. The customer's not paying for, you're paying for. Indirectly, the customer's paying for it for sure,
Hmm.
um, but directly, you're paying for it. And then you get into waste, and this is where like this costs you money, and it's costing you money because it's costing the customer something. And so if the customer's like waiting for your solution to fix their problem, then
Mm-hmm.
that's waste. That's time that they're waiting for that's costing you money. If you can serve them faster, you'll be able to get more money and you'll be able to deliver value to them. But that waiting is what you're experiencing. If you're experiencing it and the customer's experiencing it, and it's extending the timeline for them to actually get the solution to their problem.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I think there is a lot of crossover between marketing and operations? Because there's like 6 or 7 core tenets of every business, no matter what industry you're in.
There's
There's
five.
what are your five? Let's hear your the
The
five
five.
functions. Okay,
Yeah.
well, that's all right. Well, give me the five, Zach. Go ahead.
Yeah. So there's one that makes you money, and all the other ones cost you money, but you got to do them. And so the first one is value creation. This is the thing that your customer's paying for.
Mm,
The second one is value delivery. This is how you ensure the customer receives your solution to their problem. The third one is customer acquisition, right? This is like marketing and sales functions.
hmm
Customer acquisition is all about getting your solution, not just a solution, getting your solution to the market's problem. Talent, so that's like volume. Customer acquisition is volume. If you think about filling up a bucket with water,
hmm
customer acquisition is the water. Talent acquisition is the capacity. Talent acquisition is how you create capacity. It's not just necessarily headcount or people, it's actually skills and talent.
mm
Um, so creating capacity in your business. And then finally, it's resource management, managing
mm.
time, money, energy inside of your business to efficiently create value for your customers.
Yeah, I get it now. That was I was gonna say it's like, you have what exact problem do you solve and who do you solve it for? That's kind of
Mhm.
the value creation thing, which is always the first question we ask customers at High Beam. It's like, okay, who is this for? Well, it's for everybody. We're like, okay, no, it's not. Let's go back and get really in the weeds. Like, I know you have the heart to serve everybody, but like, if we only had to serve one person, who's it going to be? Value delivery. That's like operations to me. Like who's the one like making sure the machine's running. Customer acquisition. Yeah, I usually break that out to sales and marketing. Like, you have to know how to do both of those things
Yep.
if you want to run a healthy business. Talent acquisition is just your HR function. That
Yep.
makes a lot of sense. And resource management is your CFO, your financial controller, whoever that is inside your business. And so that
100%.
I'm totally getting where we're at now. So I'm tracking now because it's interesting that High Beam sits in this customer acquisition bucket that you have. And the first question we always ask is off the top line of what's the problem? Who do you solve it for? So once we get clear on that, then we can get into, okay, are you delivering value the correct way? Because what we know, and it's funny that you put acquisition after value delivery. I think I'm assuming it's left to right by importance, or is it just all the
No,
same, or it has to happen at the
no.
same time, or
Yeah, I think they're all important. You
okay,
got to do all five of those functions, and so there's no hierarchy here,
yeah.
except for value creation. If you don't solve a problem, then you're out of
Yeah.
business.
Well, I mean, people ask me all the time, like, what business should I start? And I'm like, okay, well, what are you like? What are you proficient at? What are you passionate about?
Yeah,
And what can you get paid for? And wherever those three things overlap, that's the business you should start. And if you
yeah,
can't, then you're really just running a hobby, which is okay. Just call it a hobby. You don't have to make money from it. Enjoy your time.
for
But
sure.
the value delivery part is interesting because what we see from a marketing standpoint is people will start to market their business. I just had this happen this week. Was on a client call. This guy has built a beautiful facility. It's assisted senior living facility. It's amazing. They've put a ton of money into it, but they're at like 15% uh, booking to total capacity. And they've spent money on marketing. They're spending a ton of money, and so they have a marketing problem. They don't have a value delivery problem, right?
Hmm.
But there are some people that you go look at their reviews online, and all of a sudden you realize like you guys aren't delivering something correctly. Like, it's either too expensive, or it's too slow, or it's too something. So when you're looking at the value delivery stage, like, what are some of the maybe the checklist or some of the red flags? Like, what are you looking at as that's an area where we need to focus our attention immediately?
Yeah, value delivery. So I try to use some analogies here that everyone's going to be used to. And so think about value delivery as the way in which your solution gets to the customer. You
Mm,
want to make sure that the customer's receiving your solution. So it's one thing to sell them on something. It's one thing to sell them on your solution to the product, and maybe they value you creating that for them.
mm,
But then actually receiving it and getting it in timely fashion, whatever that expectation is, at a certain price point, whatever that expectation is, that's all value delivery. And so, if you think about like literally, you make a widget and you ship it, that trucking process, that logistics process is a part of value delivery. Is it going to get there? Is it going to show up with defects because it rambled around in the truck and got mashed up? Is it going to get there late, and so they no longer value it because they really needed it at a specific time?
mm,
Maybe they valued it yesterday, but they're not going to value it if they get it tomorrow.
right.
And so all of that kind of goes into value delivery. So if you apply that same analogy to any business, a service-based business, product-based business, it doesn't matter. That can be your customer experience team, your customer support team, your scheduling team, your estimating team, your you name it. That's just the way in which someone, your customer, gets the value that they need.
Got it. That's awesome. So once we've gotten that more or less ironed out, now I know there's always like you go back as you expand, as things grow, you create more value or value creation, right? Now all of a sudden you have new problems. So you'll have to go back to these buckets and adapt them and fix them, I would imagine, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
So once we've gotten that, now we're looking at customer acquisition. What are some things you're thinking about from sales and marketing, if that's all that's in that bucket? Because marketing, I tell people all the time, marketing is a great way to burn money. Ask me how I know. And with the barbecue restaurant, we had like people come in to sell us billboards. They sell us radio ads. They sold us. I bought receipts, the back of receipts at Kroger. You can put your logo on those with a little coupon. I've tried a lot of different things, and I eventually got to the point where I was like, okay, I'll make a marketing plan and a strategy and all the things. And now I have a system that I can measure against. It's our flywheel, but that did not exist for a long time. Do you like when you're coming in as an ops guy and you don't have a marketing or sales background, like what do you like, how do you coach the owner through that, or like put it like, how do they put systems in place around that so that they're not wasting money on sales and marketing? Because another thing with sales, and sorry to be long-winded here, but it's something,
No,
this
that's
is a
good.
bucket I'm really passionate about. I know a ton of guys that own businesses, and when they hire salespeople, it almost always goes badly.
Mm,
They're very much founder-led sales organizations. I have a buddy that owns a painting company. He has this problem. I have a buddy that owns an HVAC company. He has this problem. It is very difficult for these businesses to hire salespeople. And so I'd love to know both on the marketing side and the sales side, like what do you see as a reason why some of these machines break at this point, I guess is what we'd say in this specific
yeah.
scenario.
I think anytime someone's spending time on any of the five functions and they're not remembering what's the point of that function, then they lose focus and they don't actually accomplish the outcome that they want. So the example here
Mm,
for customer acquisition, the whole point, and I'd love to like beat up on this if you disagree with this. The whole point of customer acquisition is to present your value that you're creating as the solution to the market's problem.
mm,
Period.
mm-hmm,
So going back to value creation, that's making a solution to for a problem in the marketplace. Value delivery is ensuring that the customer receives your solution to their problem. Customer acquisition is presenting your solution as the solution to the market's problem. And
mm,
so it's really about attracting those customers to not just any solution, but to your solution. And so
mm,
if you're not accomplishing that, then you're doing marketing poorly. It's ineffective. Um,
mm.
and that's not a zero or one thing, right? Like you can increase effectiveness. And so that's the whole goal here is like, how can we increase the effectiveness for the cost that we're putting into it, whether it be time, money, or energy?
From my seat, what we tend to see as a big issue in this area, this is kind of where people end up hiring us. It's
Hmm.
it's like, hey, help us fix this specific function of the business,
Yep.
right now, and help us scale so that we can hire eventually and bring it in house. But essentially they don't know what KPIs to track. They don't know what success actually looks like. They have a machine and it looks like it's producing widgets, to our example, and those widgets tend to be impressions. And so they're
Yeah,
like,
sure.
look at all the eyeballs we got on this ad. Didn't we do a good job for awareness? And there's no really healthy way to measure that. And even on the sales side of things, it's like, do you actually have a system in place where you go, okay, you're going to do 100 cold calls a day, or you're going to do 20 follow-ups, or you're going to respond to leads within 10 minutes? Like there's no KPIs in there that are going to more than likely predict success from a sales and marketing standpoint. And so you tend to either have a gap in knowledge, like you just don't know what you don't know,
Yep.
or you've brought in the wrong people and they're maybe bad actors, maybe just incompetent actors more likely than not, and they don't know how to actually help your thing run better. I don't know if that sounds completely out of left field or where you think about that.
No, I totally agree with that. That's one of the things about like talent acquisition, right? Whenever let's say a business has a customer acquisition problem, they don't have the talent to fix that problem, so they hire you and your team to fix that problem for them, and that gets them so far, right? Every day really is different, and if you look at years, every year of a business is wildly different. The
Mm,
marketplace could change. There's no longer the marketplace isn't experiencing this problem anymore, and so they need a tweak on the solution because to address the problem that's for today. And so yeah, whenever you know things come and go as far as like what is actually effective, but the foundation of like you need to get customers um, aware that your solution is the solution to their problem,
Mm.
and so that way they're going to come to you and they value your product, and they're going to exchange their money for the value that you create.
I could be biased here because this is the world I live in every single day, but the data would kind of support this. Again, back to the most people are solopreneurs, and I don't think they're solopreneurs by choice. They just can't afford to hire anybody.
Yeah,
And the majority of small business owners never make more than $50,000 a year, which is crazy to me when you think about the amount of risk and work and effort and all the things that have to go into
yeah,
this, that you're only going to make 50 grand a year. Like, don't get me wrong, that's not nothing, but it's still not like you could probably get the
go
college
get a
educated
job.
70 grand a year entry level to start anywhere, you know?
Yeah,
And so, and then what's interesting back to the value creation slash delivery thing is like, because people tend to be good at the thing, they tend to be okay at getting it to people. They just, they're just not well known. We always say it's not the best known product, or it's not the best products that win, it's the best known products. And you can see that time and time again when you see somebody with 4.5 stars on Google. I used to see this in the restaurant business all the time. They'd have 4.5 stars on Google and then they'd close. And you would just go, why? What happened? And that happened in my business. Like, we had great reviews. We were growing. We actually had made it, to the point where we were doing $1 million top line, 10-15% on the bottom line. But we ended up running into a problem with talent acquisition. And so
yeah.
explain to me how, what should I be looking for inside the talent acquisition and resource management pieces? Because I got value creation down. I've got value delivery and I've got customer acquisition. These are my passion areas. I hate talent acquisition and I hate resource management. It's great when it works out. And once the person is in the team and like we're crushing it together, all the things, but it's like, what do I need to do as an operator to be better in those two areas?
Great question. So imagine, let's go back to that analogy of you're an operator and your business is a machine. There are 5 buttons on that machine. There are only 5 things you can do. You can value creation, value delivery, customer acquisition, talent acquisition, resource management. I think what you're speaking to is when people are only pressing 1, 2, 3 buttons. They're only doing a couple buttons and they're totally forgetting about the other
Mm,
functions of their business to keep it going. Otherwise, it will fail. It will fall apart. It'll stall out essentially, and you can't keep producing because there's nothing to produce for.
mm,
And so the talent acquisition button, that function on your machine, is about creating capacity. It's about being able to and just come. I always say like everything is a process, and so you want to think about like what is your process that's going to get you the results that you need
mm,
for this function. And so today it could look differently. It could be like going down to the local high school and being like, "Hey, do you need a job? I run a small business restaurant down the street, and I just need some hands.
mhm,
Um, on the other end, it could be hiring a world class recruiter who's like flying internationally to meet with people one on one and tell them about your business. That those are all processes. Those are all strategies and processes for accomplishing the result that you need. And so, if you're not putting any attention there, that's eventually going to be your bottleneck.
mm,
One of these is your bottleneck right now, regardless of where you're at. One of these is your bottleneck, and so that's what business is. That's why this game is so fun. Is that you're just constantly attacking the next bottleneck. You have a great year in business typically means uh, I'm not currently experiencing what I think is a bottleneck. We have capacity, we have customers coming in. I don't need to hire people. We're profitable. Our customers are satisfied. Right? If that's always happening, great. Just keep doing what you're doing. Like you're running
write a
that
book.
machine. Yeah, totally right. Eventually, you're going to come up to where you have an expectation for your business and you're not currently meeting that. And that's where you need to invest in talent acquisition
Mm,
and say, okay, maybe we need to learn how to deliver our value better. Maybe we need to learn how to acquire customers better. Maybe we're creating defects in our value creation. And so we need to turn our defect rate down and satisfy our customers better. Maybe
mm,
we're financially mismanaging our resources, and so we need to tighten up our cash flow processes better. And so all of those things are a process. All of those things are a strategy. Depends on what's happening in your business right now as to what you're going to focus on from a business owner's perspective. But that's where talent acquisition and resource management come into. It's just like what do you need in the season? What are the gaps and where are you wanting to go? It kind of comes all back to that. If you're
Mhm.
satisfied with what your business is doing, don't change anything. Just keep operating. You're doing something right. Eventually, you're going to hit a lid. Eventually, you're going to hit a bottleneck, and you're going to say, "Oh man, I've been um, not paying attention to this function of the business, and now this is what's limiting us."
Mm. There's something you said in there that I want to go back to really quick, just because it reminded me of my story a little bit with the barbecue restaurant. When I started that, I had this weird notion that if I just worked really, really hard, I could grind for 20 hours a day for a couple months straight. And like, if I could just get to this certain level, all of a sudden, all of my problems would disappear. And I would be living on easy street, like one of these fancy author slash internet gurus and all the things. And it never happened. I would just get to the next mountaintop and then look up and then be like, oh crap, there's a whole other mountain worth of problems to climb if I want to keep going in this game that is business, right? And there was a shift where what you said is 100% true, where the joy of the game has to become like the daily fixing of the things, right?
Yeah.
It's like how do I? You and I were talking earlier about this podcast studio type setup thing that I have now, where it's like this black wall. You can see it on the YouTube channel on Chandler Lyles' YouTube channel, not Highbeam's channel, which is what we're on now. But the first videos I shot on that channel just to get going, this is a white moisture barrier, and now I got like $100-$200 worth of cheap thin sound panels because they look good in the background. But then there's these like little white lines where it's like, all right, now I got to go fix this problem. And so the problems can be small, they can be large. It could be I've been sued before, and so that's a massive, massive problem. And it could be as small as like some flat black paint to just fill in white gaps, right? So, uh, I'd love to know what you think about that and how do you handle that, like trying to stay grounded. And I guess I'm more of a visionary type person, anyways, and you're more of the integrator side of things, right? The operator. And so, like, do you ever have problems thinking ahead, or is it always like is it both ways for you? Like, where do you land on that?
Yeah, I think so. Here's what's true: your capacity is limited, period. Everyone's capacity is limited. We all have 24 hours in a day, and you need to sleep part of the time. And hopefully, you have a good time with your family, wife, whatever. Um, so, your capacity is limited. So, you can only do so many things. You can't do everything. And so, then
I
the
hate that,
choice
by
just
the
comes
way.
in.
I hate
The
that so
choice
much,
just
Zach.
comes down to like what's going to produce the most effective outcome? What's going to give you the biggest return on your investment of time,
Mm,
money, and energy? And then just being able to prioritize through that. And so if you know that you're geared towards, let's say, customer acquisition, and maybe you're really poor at managing your resources, you need talent for that. Maybe that looks like you leveling up and gaining the talent and skills for that. Maybe that looks like hiring someone who already has the talent and skills to be able to assist you with that. So it just depends on like what resources do you have available to be able to trade for that. Is that time, or is that energy, or is that money?
hmm Now, I
And
so
how do
knew
you
this about
acquire the
myself.
talent?
Now, I knew this about myself. I gave away 60% of my company to two guys that are great operator integrator types
Hmm.
because I know I'm a mess and I need to, because if it's just one, I feel like I could use some charisma and just be like, oh yeah, we can do this. Like, let's just we can make this happen. But if there's two of them, they're sounding boards for each other to like fix my reality distortion field that I end up creating.
Yeah,
And they're like, we're not doing that. And so it works out for the most part, more times than not. And I think that's, but even if that's true, like I think that takes a certain level of self awareness to know that about yourself. And I want to go back to something you said a minute ago, where it's like when you have a bottleneck, like how do you know what, like if you don't know what you're doing and you don't know what the answers are, right? In business, so many times we know we have a problem, but I don't know how to solve it, right? What is the like how do you systematize that if you don't actually know if that's going to solve the thing, right? If it's not
yeah,
so black and white from a like production standpoint, and I'm thinking more of like the marketing sales side of things, like how do you fill that gap?
yeah. I think this comes down to a mindset of continuous improvement. And so what I teach my customers, what I teach my audiences on LinkedIn, whatever, through my newsletter, you name it, is build out time in your day to continuously improve. And what that tactically looks like is I spend 30 minutes every day just purely focused on fixing what bugs me. And so the 80% of my time during those 30 minutes is spent on tiny, tiny improvements. Fixing the thing in your background, like painting the black stuff. That's great. Fix what bugs you. About 15% of the time, it's going to be a little bit more um, of a larger scope of a fix. It's going to be like, oh man, we need to, um, you know, really completely change our website or our landing page or whatever that is. And on the other end, it's like, oh man, we need to launch this new product. That's going to take 90 days or so, right? And so it just depends on the scale as to what you want to fix, but building the behavior and the habit of every single day, I'm going to spend at least 30 minutes
Mm.
just fixing what bugs me. And the bug could be this tiny, tiny headache, or the bug could be this debilitating migraine. And so,
Mm.
just depending on what you're focused on, if you build that habit of saying, I'm going to quote, go to the gym, I'm going to spend 30 minutes in my business and just purely work on fixing what bugs me, you're gonna learn new things through that activity. You're gonna learn
Hmm.
how to deadlift. You're gonna learn how to do new exercises, so to speak. You're gonna gain talent and skills. Um, and that's where, like, if you really want to level up, you hire a team member who has those talents and skills, or you hire a coach who can help you learn those talents and skills. You hire a consultant, you hire an agency, whatever. It just depends on the resources that you have available. Are you going to do it yourself, or are you not going to do it yourself?
Mm.
And making that exchange.
Yeah, I love that. I love the resources thing because, again, back to this cash flow issue, like that is something people are cognizant of all the time. And so many businesses are bootstrapped. They don't come from money. They don't have a big investment on the back end, and they've got to be the ones that go in and build all the systems out. And they're working tons of hours a day and all the things. How do you coach entrepreneurs who have that DNA and their brain has taught them or remembered that to get to this point in a survival standpoint, we've had to fix it all ourselves. We go to YouTube first. We do the research. We get it cut. Like we do it. Like there's a leak in the wall in a pipe. We go on YouTube and figure out how to fix it. Versus like I call an expert to have them come in and fix it. How do you know when it's time to invest that cash in more professional help versus just having you learn how to do it and fix it?
Yeah. Have you ever played? I mean, I'm surely you've played Monopoly.
Oh yeah, it's great.
Okay, so
Undefeated.
any life, like, business is just a resource management game at the end of the day. Like, if you get 50 team members, what you're doing as CEO is 99% resource management. And so
Mm.
you're purely just saying, how do we allocate time, money, energy uh, in the places that will amplify our impact? And so if you're just a 1, 2, 3 person team right now and you're short on resources, your resources are kind of maxed out right now. They're going in all the places. You have to just decide, like, what do I have? What am I going to trade? Am I going to trade my time? Maybe it takes 2 weeks to fix this problem, or am I going to hire someone? And I think this gets back to, like, you figuring out um, really your sweet spot. So if you think about your business as like, okay, I generate X revenue when I do this, when I spend this much time, then can you afford to pay someone else to fix the problem rather than you spending time on that?
Mm.
I think, like, I think about, like, Alex Hermosi's or something, where he's talking about, like, I can go sell 3 customers for the next 3 hours and pay someone to cook my meals for me, because I'm going to make way more money doing that than
Hmm.
spending the time and money, like, doing it myself, creating my own lunches and dinners. And so it's a similar, it's a trade off analysis, really. It's just like, what do you want fixed? What's of most priority? What's actually bugging you? What's, like, really bugging you, and not like what's in your feelings. Not like what do you have an itch for? Like, what's stopping you from getting you to where you want to go? Um, and just deciding on how you're going to fix that. Are you going to fix that via money, time, energy? How are you going to do that?
We run into one of the big three problems we solve for people at Highbeam is that essentially you have an owner who's running all the ads themselves and they've not delegated that piece yet.
Yep.
So like that's the person I'm thinking about in this scenario where they have the resources to bring somebody else in, either full time in house or hire an agency, but they still are addicted to doing it themselves. And it specifically in these examples, the owner tells us, or when I'm talking to them, just having coffee, hanging out, they're like, "Yeah, I have these goals to build XYZ type company, which is much larger than when they're at now." And so, if that's actually the goal, and there's something in their psyche that's keeping them from being able to delegate or either internally to a hire or externally to an agency, like what would you say to that person that doesn't or is afraid to delegate, doesn't want to delegate? Maybe it's been burned with delegation in the past and won't go back and just do it. Like they're insisting on this part of the machine I will control, even though my goal is to have a much different looking machine 5 years from now.
Yeah, I think in that example, a lot of times people don't have a vision for what they should be doing with their time if they don't spend it on that.
Mm,
And so maybe for whatever reason, they don't even have to be talented in it. They just are getting this dopamine hit from doing something because it feels productive, when
mm,
really they're way less productive than handing it to a person who has the skills and expertise to execute that process. Um, and so they just don't have vision. They don't have vision for what they're specifically competent and passionate about, to be able to afford one, replace themselves doing that process, but then two, make a greater return than what that person's doing. And
mm,
that's kind of the whole point of being a business owner, to some extent. It's just like you're constantly, if you're growing your business, you're constantly figuring out, like, you're constantly needing to ask the question, what's going to be the greatest return on investment for my time, my energy, and my money?
mm.
Because your time, your energy, and your money is your business's time and energy and money. And so it's a direct reflection of that. And so I think I think a lot of people get stuck because they just don't have an idea as to what they should be focused on next. They only see the current bottleneck, and they're just like, well, I'm going to put my time and attention on that, rather than thinking, okay, well, what needs to be done next? Like, if let's imagine that that was just solved for, what are you going to be working on next? And maybe it's in the same function. Maybe it's still customer acquisition, but just a different part of customer acquisition. Maybe it's a totally different function. Maybe it's fixing your value creation.
Mm.
Um, but I think that's the biggest thing, is that they're stuck where they are because they don't have vision for where they're going.
So where does vision fit into the five functions of business? Because for me, vision's very easy because I'm just wired that way. I think in 10-year chunks and it's detrimental to the business, but I don't know how to incorporate that into a day-to-day operations now. So is that a annual thing that you just sort of think through and have the discipline to do it then, or is it important to incorporate into one of these five areas, or did we find a missing hole and we're going to get an updated top bar that says vision for your life or
No,
your company?
vision fits within resource management. And so
Okay,
vision
interesting.
comes down into, because resource
Mm,
management is your time,
okay,
energy, and money. And
okay.
so vision, if you break vision down, it's destination and direction.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you going, and like, are we making progress towards actually getting there? And so
Mm,
if you think about, like, and it could be a macro vision, it could be a business vision, like, we want to hit this goal by this year, whatever. It could also be a vision for today, or it could be a vision for this process. Like,
mm-hmm.
what's the outcome of this process, and are we on track? And so vision casting really just comes down to labeling the destination and giving yourself direction to make sure that you stay on track. Whenever you open up Waze and go towards a destination, it's constantly telling you how far you are away from it and if you're on track or not. Or if traffic pops up and you have a bottleneck, maybe you need to reroute. Think about that same analogy, and with vision inside of your business. Um,
So
so so
how
Go
does
for it.
vision affect value creation if, for instance, like to be transparent, my vision's much larger than a marketing agency, and at some point the vision I have to achieve that or to get closer to it, I don't believe you ever hit your vision. I think I like Jim Collins' analogy where it's a North Star you just pursue, but you don't ever actually get there. Like, at what point does vision influence the value creation piece of the business that you're running? Because you would have to add a new SKU, or are you adding a new type, or is that can value creation evolve? Like, how do those two things balance out?
Yeah, so I think about it as, like, vision uh, is a little bit about where your resources are going once you actually have them. So you're planning a future day of saying, when I have this money, when I have this time, when I have this energy, when my business has this time, money, energy, um, here's where it's going to go.
Hmm.
Here's what we're going to do with it. Um, and so if you think about vision in that lens, then you're saying, okay, are we moving in that direction or not? That gives us a direction and a destination to aim towards, and you can constantly lift up that vision, so you're never actually reaching it. Um, or it's kind of the whole idea of, like, as soon as you get close to that finish line, you're making a new finish line. And so
Mm.
you're just going to continue running and putting in your 20-mile march, to use Jim Collins' language.
Yeah, but I think this might be a part 3 podcast. I don't want to be bogged down here too much, and maybe I just need to chew on this for a minute because I'm thinking about like the vision to me is almost the commitment to running a bunch of different races in a specific direction, not necessarily ever crossing that finish line, right? So I don't think we have to get stuck in this, and I don't think I disagree with you. I think I disagree with like 20% of it. And I think that's what makes our friendship and coffees way too long in
Yeah,
general. If you guys had the 3-hour coffees that Zach and I have together, like those could be their own podcast, I think.
for
So
sure.
I want to make sure we leave time for the waste piece because when I was reading through this after you shared this on LinkedIn, and by the way, if you're not following Zach and connected with him on LinkedIn, 100% go do that. We'll make sure to link that in the show notes for this. But this graphic, I saw the waste piece and a few of these things I was like, oh, I can feel that in my bones, especially from the restaurant days, because the waste was visible when food went bad. It was brutal. But even now with High Beam, I'm seeing a lot of things where I'm like, okay, we just hired a new person about 90 days ago, so I'm looking at like non-utilized talent. I'm like, okay, is that person ready for more? And I wish we'd had this conversation before we just had our quarterly planning, and we're doing a complete restructure of our whole team based on client load and current talent
Love it.
acquisition that we have because that person has crushed it and has excess capacity, and so now we're able to reorganize and now everything's going to go better. So I love this, and I'd love to work it through like what is waste, and then let's hit like maybe the top 3 biggest ones and why they're the biggest ones in the clients you end up working with.
Yeah. So waste. So if you think about the 5 functions, in those 5 functions, you're doing things that aren't actually accomplishing the outcome of that function. So, for example, if your customer acquisition, if the point of customer acquisition is to present your solution as the solution to the marketplace's problem, then everything that you're doing in there that's not directly accomplishing that outcome is waste. And so, a good example here, I think we can actually use the value creation as an example. Let's say you're in your barbecue restaurant, and let's say you are overproducing on meals. Maybe you're not producing to order, you're producing based on some guess, like you're going to have a X amount of people come in at 11 a.m. for lunch, whatever. You're going to overproduce. Well, if you overproduce, a portion of those are going to be defects, um, and then you're going to have to store them in inventory, and then they're going to get cold, and so then they're turned into defects, and all of that is just waste. It's
Mm,
all this. It's all this work that's happening that no one's paying for, but you. The customer's not paying for it. It's not going to do anything for you. It's purely waste. And so it's like if you could prevent waste from being created to begin with, it's going to save you a ton of time, money, and energy. And so in every single process has the ability to create waste. Um, Meaning, like, are you storing inventory, whether it be information or actual material? If you store that, that's taking up space, brain space, it's taking up warehouse space, it's taking up kitchen space, doesn't matter. It all applies. Um, Once you store it because you've overproduced on it, maybe you're thinking too much, maybe you're creating too much material, maybe you're communicating too much information, because you've stored it, all this overproductions. Well, now it's gonna you're having to transport that. All of these are waste, by the way: defects, overproduction, waiting, non-utilized talent, transportation, inventory, motion, excess processing. All of those things are waste because no one's paying for it except the business. It's a complete drain on your business, and it's happening in every single process inside of your business. um, and so I just come back to, like, if you can identify what's wasteful and what's valuable, then you can start turning down the knobs on the things that don't matter, which is all this waste.
mm,
it I would also say waste tends to start from overproducing. You're producing more than what's needed, whether that's internally or externally. And so if you're producing more than what the customer is asking for, that's waste. If you're producing more than maybe you have a step in your process and you're going to pass that project on to the next team member, and you're doing more than they need to continue moving the ball down the field, then that's waste. You're wasting your time, you're wasting your energy, and you're wasting money at the end of the day.
Yeah, I had a we had a lot of customers that would come in. I say a lot because it felt like a lot, but I think a lot of times in business, the squeaky wheel gets paid attention to,
Yep.
and it's the wheel's not going to break, and this wheel is not important, and you listen to it because not a lot of people talk to you about the problems, and so you end up doing what the wheel says to do. This person, they all come in, they're like, "Hey, why don't you guys have salads? Can we have a salad?" Da da da. And salad, a barbecue salad, is technically within our scope as a barbecue restaurant. Where I'm going, okay, I could put brisket and chicken and pulled pork on a salad and make it all from scratch and do the thing. And yeah, I'd like to have salads for lunch. Like that seems like a good idea. I go to restaurants, I see chicken Caesar salad mania on every single American restaurant of all time. And so we put salads on the menu, and we did it for like 4 or 5 months. And I'm doing a menu analysis one day and I'm looking at what our sell through item is for everything. And by the way, it's pulled pork sandwiches and French fries. If I could open up the Raising Cane's of barbecue, I would probably have done that. But I was a chicken. I couldn't do it. I couldn't eliminate everything to just sell those two things. But we had these salads and we ran the numbers. We were selling like 1.15 salads a day on average. And I saw that and I was like, this is just a massive, massive waste. It's a waste from both value delivery because it's extra equipment that has to store all these items.
Yep.
It's waste from overproduction or inventory would be more of what that would be specifically in this scenario. Because if you're not selling more salad, you're basically throwing all that food away every 2 to 3
100%.
days, depending on what it is, and you're even wasting a lot of I guess which one would this go into? Non-utilized talent or using talent in the wrong way? Because people have to prep that stuff, and they're prepping stuff that's not going to sell, and so they'd be better
Yes.
off prepping barbecue sauce, which we go through by the gallons, versus let me make ranch that we're just not going to move. Because yes, we made ranch from scratch because we were psychotic, and it was my mom's vision, so we made it happen. So I totally agree with that. Do you have to, like, how do you measure that? How do you measure waste? Like, how do you know you're wasting stuff? Because I feel like menus are a little bit easier because there's so much sales data around it. And you can see the stuff being thrown away, but a lot of waste ends up being hidden from time to time. So how do you make hidden waste seen? I don't even know how to phrase this question because it feels
Yeah.
pretty like out there.
Sure. This is where I harp on making your work visible, because if you can make it visible, then you can start to delineate like what's value and what's waste.
Mm,
Um, and so make it visible by literally putting it into a project management software. I recommend Motion. I'm not getting paid by them to say this. It's absolutely ridiculous. You can also use jankier softwares like Asana or ClickUp or any of those things. But the point here is like make it visible so then you can come back and evaluate and say, okay, what part of this was wasteful? The other story that I think helps people in this is like imagine if the customer was just shadowing you. They're
mm,
looking over your shoulder at, and they have a stopwatch. They're sitting here watching you spend time on creating their solution. What are the things that they would value and what are the things that they would not value? What are the things that they would give you money for? Not what are the things that they would value. Let's get really like tactical. What are the things that's like, yes, I'm going to give you $1 for that, dollar for that, dollar for that? And what are the things that they're going to be like, that's a waste of time. I'm not paying for that. You're ridiculous.
mm,
A lot of that comes down to like you planning, you researching, you um, creating a defect. They're not going to pay for that. They want a good product. You overproducing. They don't want that much. They just want this much. Them waiting, them simply waiting 2 hours for you to get back to them. If a customer sends you an email and they're waiting for 2 hours, that's two
mm.
hours that they're spending of their time waiting for a response from you, and that's waste. If they're paying you for that response.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so it all kind of comes back to this of like imagine constantly there's a customer over every shoulder of your employee and they're only going to pay you when they value it. What would that be? And I think that helps you determine, would a customer pay me for what I'm doing right now?
Mm.
Or am I paying for this because I think it's valuable?
Man, there's something in me that's like rejecting this. And I think this is why you and I get along so well. It's because we get to, again, back to these 3 hour coffees. It's a lot of back and forth about things. And I tend to live more in the like woo woo land. I don't even know what you would describe it. It's more of like the feeling land. And Zach, why I value you as a friend is that you bring me down to ground. And so help me unpack this. The story that came to my mind as you were explaining that, Steve Jobs, after he got kicked out of Apple the first time, he goes and founds Next Computers. And the
Mm.
story famously goes that he was maniacal. This was before he had like really had some of his ego, and he was still younger, and like he hadn't quite been brought all the way down to what ended up coming back after Pixar and all the things. So with Next, he insists that they machine perfectly vertical walls for this computer or PC or whatever the heck it's called. And it's perfectly vertical. And you're a big ops guy. And I want you to tell the story about the dumb metal thing that's outside of your desk that I kicked 50 times a day at Ramsey. But like essentially, when you're manufacturing something, and on YouTube, you can see me doing a great hand touchdown signal now, but it's like vertical walls and it's a perfect cube. And he wanted to do it just for design purposes of like almost the art, and the amount of engineering challenges they had to overcome to just make this thing happen is insane. And this product flopped. But you juxtapose that with when he comes back to Apple and he has some more wisdom and experience under his belt, and he looks at Johnny Ive, his lead designer, and he goes, hey, we want to make this more round, this more round. Like he insists on certain design aspects that I think if you asked customers about, they wouldn't have paid for it in that moment. So like and I wrote this question down, where's the art in all of this? Where's the R&D? I think back to the Jim Collins thing. It's like, I think the great companies in the world spend 10% on R&D and have essentially no expectation of return on capital. Is that just sort of a non-value type activity that's in one of those buckets that's eventually might become value creation? Or where do you land on R&D and some of this magic stuff that's not easily trackable day one?
100% necessary. It's in the non-value category, meaning you're paying for it, but you got to do it. And so whenever I say you're paying for it, I'm talking about direct transaction. What are you paying for? What's the customer paying for? Indirectly, the customer's paying for it. But if your pricing is wrong, the customer's not going to pay for it. If the Apple computer is $50,000 instead of $2,000, they're not going to have a market. And so they've spent all this time R&Ding, and come to the market with a solution that the customer doesn't value, because they don't value at a $50,000 price point. They value at a $2,000 price point. And so it totally gets into the realm of like pricing and value and costs associated with that.
Mm.
But yeah, R&D is absolutely important. It's a part of resource management. You're paying for that, because if it doesn't go well, the customer's not going to pay for the solution to their problem. If it does go well, then they will pay for it.
Mm.
It just depends on like what's the outcome of that R&D, and is it going to result in a greater quality solution to the customer's problem that they're willing to pay for.
I mean, that's a pretty good answer. I guess I'll have to accept that as a win. I thought I caught you on one there, but you're a professional, so I guess we'll have to take that. I do think there's, from time to time, business owners tend to be really good at the thing in the business they're running, and I think they are so much, back to the Michael Gerber example of like a technician. They love the thing,
Yep.
that they will add a bunch of different steps to the thing because they just love the thing. And I do like the analogy you have of like, imagine a customer sitting there with you, looking at you making the thing that you're passionate about. Like, would they actually find that valuable as well? Or is this just an exercise in art for you? And then you got to determine, like, is this just a scratch or an itch that you need to scratch? Or are you actually doing work that's going to create more value for the company? So I really like that. I think you brought me around full circle there, which I don't love losing to you, but this isn't actually a game of Monopoly, and I'm undefeated. And anytime you want to go, just let me know. I would love to know, like, for you, with the Five Functions company, like, who's a good fit for what you do? Like, who should be reaching out to you?
Yeah, it's the small business owner with 5 to 15 team members, and some of the things I've been hearing from customers are like, man, our revenue has, let's say, 5x, but I'm making as much, if not less, profit than what I used to make.
Mm.
Or another story I hear is like, man, we are constantly fighting fires. Everyone on our team is fighting fires. And when I hear that, I'm hearing they're not actually putting fires out. They're just sitting there like managing fires. If you're constantly having fires, that's a process problem.
Mm.
And somewhere in the process, fires are being ignited. So we need to stop that and fix the process, so that you can continue to grow. So what I really end up doing is like helping them fix their processes in all of these functions, taking it one process at a time and saying, okay, how can we accomplish the outcome of the process that you want, the quality side of that, in the simplest way possible so that it's easy to execute, and then create some automations, create some efficiencies so that it's fast, so that we can get that process accomplished quickly. And continuously making those improvements in your business is what's going to take you from here to there, wherever you're wanting to go. As long as you're wanting to grow, making those improvements in your side of your processes is what's going to get you there. Um, the other thing is, like, you kind of harped on it earlier. Someone can't afford to hire a new team member. I see a lot of companies, like, they're profitable, they hire team members, they start draining their profits from that, from like overstaffing a little bit, and they look up and they have 10 team members. They're not as profitable as they used to be. They're more stressed out, and they think that hiring another person to create capacity is going to solve their problems, but it's not, because their process is where the problem lies. And so fixing the process before you increase your capacity. Hiring someone is really expensive. It's extremely expensive. It's like a terrible return on investment if what you're trying to do is solve problems. I would always recommend, like, people not solve a problem with a person, solve a problem with the process. And then once you got the process right, then put in the person for them to execute.
That's pretty good. That's a tweetable line right there. That solve
There you go.
a problem with a process, not a person. It's got alliteration. You
It's
may
way
be a
more
marketer.
affordable.
You know what I mean? I think
I'm working on it.
I think we got a name for this little graph here. I think it's just the 5 functions framework, man. I think that could be your name for the thing, and that's what you run everything through. And maybe it sticks, and maybe I get a little royalty, and we're good to go. Maybe I just get free coffee for the rest of my life. I'm good either way.
There you go.
Well, Zach, man, I appreciate you joining me today. We'll make sure I cannot stress enough, this is not just because Zach is here. He is a good friend of mine for years. We have had, I don't know how many hours of conversations, like beating up on ideas and
Weeks
business,
and months
and
worth.
like it's one of my favorite things I get to do with you. A lot less now than I used to, obviously, but the newsletter that I get is a small little snippet into that world again, and I think that you don't even have to be connected with Zach. You can just be on this newsletter and get a ton of value. And I need to give a recommendation for this newsletter and why people need to sign up for it. If you're on the YouTube channel right now, you can see how many books I have behind me. I mean, I probably have 400 or 500 books. And at this point, I really just keep them for decoration purposes, because most books aren't worth reading. And it's crazy to me when you think about the amount of time, money, and resources that go into books. And I can't tell you how many books I've picked up and read, and you get maybe a quarter of the way through and you're like, this is a really good book, I'm going to start recommending this to people. And I used to do that. And then you finish the book and you're like, this book went from a 5-star book to maybe 3.5 stars, if I'm being honest, probably even 3. It's like an okay book. There was a great nugget in the beginning, and then it just died after that. This newsletter you send out is so good, and it's so short, and it's a great thought provoker to start your week. Because if you are a entrepreneur, you are in the day-to-day running your business, and it is difficult to do what we talked about here, where you work on the business and not just in the business. This email, for me at least, is a great reminder every single week of like, oh, I need to be doing better about working on my business. No matter how much experience I have, it's a great reminder to get back in the trenches. Yeah, that's the easy thing to do, but then sometimes you got to step back, to one of the back tents, and reassess the battle plan. Where are the weaknesses? What do we got to do to fix it? The 5 functions is an incredible framework here. I love the words and the thoughts and how you're doing this. And the newsletter is an amazing asset to be able to remind it on all these buckets what you need to actually go do. So I appreciate you joining me, my friend. I appreciate all of you out there listening. Go get on the newsletter, get on the newsletter, get on the newsletter. Another marketing trick, Zach, you say everything in 3s and people love it. All right, brother. See you next time. Peace.
Thanks, man.